Hello crafters, this is Raquel from Paints and Glitter, and today I'm coming along with a paper rose collection, and this will be a quick tutorial for you. I will be working with Rustic Easter 6x6 papers. These, by the way, are 18 double-sided pattern papers. You get 3 of each of 12 designs, and they are printed on 200 GSM paper. I'll also be using the Rustic Easter tags and tickets embossed die cuts. These are 4 sheets of 6x8 embossed pop-out die cuts. They're printed on 200 GSM cardstock. There's a total of 4 designs and you do get 1 sheet of each. So here you're going to get a quick preview. There's different frames, there are flags, tags, images that are perfect for Easter or springtime. There's little ones that look like stamps, and there's just adorable little images here. What's unique about them, of course, is the fact that they're already embossed for you, so you don't need to add anything to them. And I'll be using quite a few of these today to share with you an adorable little folio. So if you'd like to, of course, I invite you to go ahead and follow along with this tutorial. And if you want to see these images or items all in more in depth with more description of what's available, then of course I invite you to follow the link I'll have in the description bar of my unboxing video, where you get to see what else I'll be working with this month. So to begin, we're going to be using some 300 GSM cardstock, and this is panel A. It's 6 3/4 by 6 inches, and you'll be scoring that 3 times following the measurements on your screen. The second panel is B. This is 6 1/2 by 6, and you can score this at 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch, as seen on your screen as well. There's a third panel. This is panel C. This is cut at 6 1/2 by 5. You can also score that and at 1/4 inch on one edge. And of course you can slow this down if you'd like to, but the next thing you want to do is to burnish the pieces that you have scored. And another thing that I'll tell you is that you're going to want to apply adhesive only on the 1/4 inch fold for all of these. So there's going to be another panel in the future that you'll see, and I'll be more specific with that. But to begin, this is going to be the 2 panels that are going to create basically the base, but there's going to be another one as well for the cover. But once you have all of these burnished, you'll start to see how these will come together. But before we begin, after burnishing and folding these score lines, what I can tell you is on panel C, which is the one that you see here, and this is a shorter one, all you have to do is fold and burnish the 1/4 inch fold line that you see on the right hand side there. But we're actually going to bring that right back to the scoring tool and add another 1/4 inch score line on the opposite end. That's why I said disregard the 1/2 inch one. So that way you have a 1/4 inch fold line on both ends. So that way that pocket will actually be 6 inches wide. And here you'll see how that's actually going to fit very snugly right onto panel B. So that pocket will be 6 inches wide. Now go ahead and cut down another piece of cardstock at 6 1/4 by 6 inches. This is actually panel D. It's going to be your cover, and you're going to adhere it to panel A. So there, what you see me doing is cutting down the 1/4 inch score line at 45-degree angles. I've gone ahead and applied dry adhesive, and there I'm just adhering D to A along that 1/4 inch edge. So there you see how I was able to join those two, super easy, and it's going to give you a bit of a gusset. Then on the opposite end of that first panel, you're going to adhere the third panel that you had cut right along that 1/4 inch edge again. And there you see I've applied dry adhesive. I cut down the corners by a 45-degree angle on both sides. And then this is going to be the third piece. So you're adhering panel B to panel A along that 1/4 inch edge again. And this is going to create a tri-fold little folio. So there in the front, you're actually seeing panel D. And now on this third panel, you're going to adhere the shorter one. And this is the one that measures 5 inches by 6.5 inches. We're going to actually cut this down to create 2 little pockets. Again, this is panel C, and we've cut it down to 2 3/4 by 6.5. And then the second one is the remaining piece. And these are both going to adhere right onto panel B on the inside of our folio. Again, go ahead and cut off a 45-degree angle on each one of those 1/4 inch wide tabs, and you'll see how easily they will fit together. So I'm going to repeat the sizes here. Disregard what I wrote on there because it's actually 2 3/4 inches tall by 6.5 and 2 1/4 inch tall by 6.5. Okay, so you have those 2 strips. We'll come back to those, but let's start adding some little magnets. This is going to adhere to the very front of the folio, which is panel D, and I'm measuring this out to make sure that the little magnet is actually going to allow me to adhere this closed. So first I place the magnet on the front. I attach the matched magnet on the back of the front one. I attach or add a droplet of adhesive there, liquid adhesive, and then I close the folio where I want that magnet to go. That little drop of adhesive has marked the landing place for that magnet, and now I can adhere it down. There you see the top view of that. So now we can start decorating this. This is of course the fun part. What I've done is use some navy blue cardstock that I had in my stash, and this matches very nicely with this collection. So I've cut down some matting layers. Now the paper collection is 6 by 6 inches. So because my folio is actually 6 inches tall, then what I've done is cut down the matting layers by 1/16 of an inch, so that way I have a very thin border all the way around. So these measurements going forward are actually going to be suggestions, so it's all going to depend on whether or not you like to have a wide white border around your folio, or do you like to have a thinner one as I do. So all you have to do is decrease the sizes of your papers by either 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch, and because they're squares, and of course you would repeat that on just 2 sides of your paper. So here what I've done is that I've used this gorgeous die that is from the Squares Lots and Lots of Squares 2.0. And what I did here is that I used the largest frame, and I cut out not only that blue frame but also that beautiful blue plaid paper, and that gave me a center there that would match exactly. And of course you can save the blue frame that you would have cut for a different project, or you can use it elsewhere on this folio, but I thought this looked so pretty together. So there in the background you see the one paper with the little eggs and then the plaid. Now this little square frame is actually not from this collection. That was left over from a different collection I've already worked with. I just thought it looked really pretty there because it has the gold. And here what I've done is that I've cut out the image of that darling little puppy. I just had to use this. He's wearing the little bunny ears and a little blue bow, and I apologize for my curly hair getting in the way there. But that's what happens when you're crafting. So this is again the Lots and Lots of Squares 2.0. This is the 4 1/4 inch square. I've done the same thing again where I took that designer paper and I cut it using that die, and then the frame would have matched, but what I did was that I tilted it on the opposite edge, so that way the little daisies would be on the top right hand side instead of the bottom, and it just gave it a tiny bit of a different look. So here from that ephemera pack, I've taken one of the labels. It does say Spring Brings New Beginnings, and I'm adding that to the front of this folio using some adhesive that's foam adhesive. So here I've also taken some little strips of paper, and these were to embellish the edges that are those little 1/4 inch lines that are now created on the folio. So you'll see that this actually faces the back, the edge and the back of the folio. And of course, that's optional. I just really think it looks pretty when you finish everything off. And because those little spaces are only a 1/4 of an inch wide, then the little strips only need to be 3/8 of an inch, if I'm not mistaken. One, two, yes, 3/8 of an inch wide. And then I used another piece of blue matting paper for the back of the folio, and I'm also going to do the inside front of the folio with the blue, and I'm also adding a pocket. So here, this is 5 by 6.5. I'm scoring it at 1/4 inch on both ends. This is going to create the inside pocket of the front, or the pocket that goes on the inside attached to the front page. I hope that makes sense. Here I'm measuring 2 inches from the bottom edge, and also just marking that top corner, omitting that 1/4 inch little fold line. And I'm taking this to my paper cutter. I really like using a guillotine because you get a nice crisp line. And I'm matching it up to that little tick mark that I created. And that's what's going to allow me to have that diagonal pocket. And there you see I'm using my scissors to just kind of clean up that little corner a little bit. And I'm also adding dry adhesive just to those 1/4 inch little tabs that I've created. Again, cutting down those tabs by 45 degrees on both sides. I'm now going to be able to attach this to what's going to be the matting layer. So I'm laying the matting layer right inside, snug with that background, what's going to be the pocket. And all I did was add some little tick marks there as well. So I just eyeball this portion because I'm going to actually be creating this is the decorative portion of this pocket. So again, my advice is that you follow, whether it be 1/8 of an inch smaller or 1/4 of an inch smaller or 1/16. It depends on how much of an edge you like to have on your papers. But there you see how this is now going to decorate the front of that pocket. And again, I'll be adhering that pocket to the actual matting layer before I place that on the page. So this measures 6 3/16 by 5 13/16. That was the size of that blue matting layer. I'm adhering those 2 tabs on both edges there. And now once that's adhered, this entire thing can now adhere to the inside of the folio. Again, that's panel D right behind there. And I'm removing those little strips for the backing of the adhesive. I'm going to add adhesive on this entire panel now. It just makes it a little bit easier to do it this way for me because I'm adhering the pocket to the actual matting layer, and this allows me to hide those little 1/4 inch portions. And of course, it's completely optional to do it this way. But in my opinion, I think it looks really nice and clean when you add pockets like this to your projects. But I'm also going to do it just directly on top for our next pocket that we'll be creating. And here's another little strip that can go right next to it because there is a fold line there. So I've skipped one and then added this to the second fold line. And now I'm adding the remainder of that striped paper, which has the blues and greens, right to the top on the inside. It gives the illusion that there's only one paper there, but of course it's got that diagonal line in the center that lets you know there's a pocket there. Now let's take another 300 GSM piece of cardstock. This measures 5 inches by 6.5 inches, and on the short side we're going to score that at 1/2 inch. This is going to create a center panel that's going to fold up. I'm also going to cut off a 45-degree angle on both edges there, apply liquid adhesive, and I'm going to center this right onto panel A, and I'm making sure that this is adhered a 1/2 inch from both edges of that panel. And I'm using the grid on my table. I highly recommend that you always have one of these if you do craft. And taking a tool from my stash here, I did want to shape the corners of this, and of course I should have done this before adhering my papers, but this is just how I craft. So I've done the same with my matting layer. This is going to lay right on top, and I just like that ticket edge. So this blue matting layer is 5 3/4 by 4 13/16, and I did have to cut it down to that 5 3/4 inches tall there. And the reason I did that was so that I could add another little decorative strip at the top. But now I'm using from the designer paper, the paper that has the little bunny and the door. It has a nice little bunting also on the fence, and then the little Easter eggs, and it's got the wreath. It's very, very beautiful. I thought that scene would look really nice front and center on the inside of this folio, so I'm simply adhering that right to the center of this page. And then I'm going to be decorating the top portion there with another little strip. So of course you can use leftover strips of paper for this. This is what I love about double-sided papers, is that it is so easy to use them, because if you need to find a coordinating strip, you just flip your paper over and usually you can find one that's going to work perfectly. So here's the back side of that bunny theme paper with the door. That paper is beautiful in and of itself, but on the back there's also those little floral bouquets. This measures 6 by 6, and it's going to go right in the center of that folio page. Again, this is panel A, so I'll be pressing that down. And now we can start adding the little pockets that we had created by cutting down our 5.5-inch paper. And these strips are going to measure, I believe it's 5 7/8 inches wide, or 5 and, let's see, what's a 16th less than 6 inches? 5 15/16. So as you can see, what I'm doing is that I'm adding these strips now with those 1/4-inch tabs right to the matting layer again. Now this is personal preference. You can add it on the top, but I'm hiding those tabs behind that matting layer, and they are 2 1/4 inches from the edge, but I did write 4 1/4 inches from the bottom edge because I measured all the way to the top of that. So that way maybe it's a little bit easier. And there you see on both sides. I do like to double check just to make sure that I don't get wonky edges. This is the second one that measured 2 3/4 inches tall by 6.5. We're going to add a matting layer to this as well. And again, the length of this is going to depend on whether or not you like to have a white border on your paper. As you can tell, I don't. So that's going to adhere all the way at the bottom. So make sure you do add adhesive not only to those little tabs on the edge, the 1/4-inch tabs, but also on the very bottom of this. That way your paper doesn't accidentally slip out when you start adding little elements to this. And as you can see here, I am adhering this to the front, not the back. Those little edges are not, see that? They're not on the back. Okay. So now I'm adhering this entire panel onto the base of this folio. And what I've done is use the dry adhesive on those edges. Now there's a tiny bit of bulk because of those folded tabs on the back, but I promise you that once this is put together, you don't even notice it. It's actually quite streamlined, if I can say so myself. And I wanted to say that if you have any questions, if you're following this tutorial and you need any specific details, if you want to give this a try and you're new to paper crafting and the measurements just don't come easily to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Leave me a comment and I will let you know. I've been doing math for so long that to me it's second nature. And I don't even think about it when I'm crafting, so I often have to go back and write down the measurements, And I do apologize for that. It's just that for my brain, math just comes naturally. And I realize that not everyone's like that. But here, what you're going to do is now add that matting layer right to the base. And if you notice that image that I use for the matting layer, because these papers come in groups of 3, then I'm using the very same image and now cutting that down to be the decorative matting layer of those little pockets we created. So again, you can cut these down as you like. I'm just following the same image of that darling little house, the little sheep with the little basket there or wheelbarrow of eggs, and this will decorate each one of these little pockets. And I like the continuity of that, and I like that it makes it easy to craft. So applying just gentle pressure here, this finishes these little pockets, and of course I clean off any little droplets of adhesive. And now we can close this and continue to decorate what is going to be the back of this panel. I'm using the paper that has the little eggs, but I flipped that over and now I'm using the yellow portion of that paper, matting it onto the blue and adhering that to cover, of course, the magnet and the page. And you're going to notice there's a little edge there that is free, and I'm going to be decorating that with a little strip that actually measures 1/2 inch wide, and it's got the pretty little eggs. So cute. And that was to create a little bit of contrast there. Now, using more elements of the embossed die cuts, I've taken 2 of these frames, and I just think that these are so adorable. So what I've done is I've adhered them onto vellum, and of course you can tell that I am fussy cutting those edges to remove the edge of the vellum from these little frames, and I'll be using these to decorate the folio, creating some image clusters with other images from this collection. So this is a great way to add a little bit of what I would say opacity to some images or create a very subtle background. But here I'm introducing a stitch tag from the Stitch Tags metal die. All I did was take a little strips of paper and also that little flag with a bow that's part of the ephemera from this collection, and I used leftover little papers to decorate that. And here is that little yellow frame, and onto that frame I'm adding the image of the little duckling, the little cow, and then the other little ticket there that of course you can fill out. So this is just a lot of fun to create groupings of images that you like. This is the way that I enjoy using these images. They don't have to be in any particular order. What I do like, however, is the contrast of colors. That background is very subtle with the stripes, and so it was a nice place to add a delicate image such as the one with the little duckling and the little cow without it being too busy. So there I'm adding some white twine to the little tag, and I'll be adhering that to the front of this pocket as well. And as you can tell, I've staggered them from the top to the bottom. Then on this page with the yellow background, I'm adding yet another little frame that I have backed with vellum. I'm adding one of those little tab pieces right along the edge, and then using the ephemera piece that has the tea kettle. That was one of my favorites. I think it's so gorgeous. By the way, if you like these images, you can certainly use the larger ones from the 12 by 12 paper collection, and that is absolutely stunning as well. So if you like the larger version of these types of things, please be sure to check that out. You're going to absolutely enjoy this collection of papers. It is so gorgeous, and there are images on that larger one that are not available in this one because the scale is very different, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. So here you can tell that I'm using again the same technique, another little frame with a vellum, another little tab on the side, a piece of ephemera in the center, and then a leftover little piece from the frame that I had cut out. and that created that grouping. Now I'm using the smallest of the tags from the stitch tag collection and another little frame here. And what I want you to notice is that that frame is absolutely tiny and delicate and absolutely darling. So what I've done is that I'm going to actually create a pocket using this little frame. So nothing goes to waste. It's all dependent on how you want to use these. I did remove a tiny bit of adhesive from that using the back of my hand. And that's just a very professional technique, you know. So here what I'm doing is that, again, I'm creating that little pocket. I made sure that it did fit over the tag. So I finished adorning that little tag with another little piece of twine. I just fed that through the little hole in the center. And if you want to know about those hole reinforcers, they are part of that tag collection. So I love the contrast and also the fact that you can use them separately. There are 3 different kinds, or you can use them, of course, with the little tags in the set. So here, adding adhesive to only 3 edges, I can create that little pocket that's going to house the tiny little tag. I love little bitty details. It just makes my heart happy. So here I'm actually adding yet another piece of ephemera that says wildflowers. So using yet another tag, I've taken another piece of the ephemera, and this is that tiny little lamb image. I thought it was so gorgeous. And what I've done is that I've cut the piece of ephemera with the lamb with one of the stitch tag dies. I cut away the border, and this way it could fit right onto another tag, and that way I could see the stitch border all the way around. Here's that other version of the hole reinforcer, and I'm just using a tool from my stash rather than the die to actually punch the hole in the center. But there is a die in that set so that you can create the holes on the tags wherever you would like. And here I'm double matting this paper with the little eggs onto some holographic paper. I've folded a piece of card to 4¼ by 5½, and I've also cut down a yellow strip of paper. I'm going to be placing this right on the center, and this is going to be the background to that tag I just created with a little lamb. And it's also a place where I can either do some journaling or add photos to go into this folio. So here, adding another little piece of white twine. I can feed that through the center, and this is going to complete this tag. However, there's that little yellow bow that was part of the ephemera. It actually was a little image that I fussy cut out of the background, so it would have been just a little square with a bow in the center. So don't forget that you can always alter your ephemera. So I'm adding that right to the top center there. And now I'm adhering this right to the center of that card. And adding also another little sentiment. This little one is actually from an extra piece that was sent to me by Paper Rose. So don't forget there are other Easter or spring collections. This just happens to be one of the collections they sent to me, but I do invite you to check those out. Now this fits perfectly into that little pocket, and here is the center portion. We're revisiting this. I've cut out 2 tags to create a pocket on the bottom of this page. These happen to measure 3½ inches long, so they will overlap, and as you can tell, I'm only applying adhesive to the outer edge and the bottom. And this is what I love about these types of dies, is that they're so very versatile. You can create many different types of crafts just using a tag die set. So if you don't have one in your stash, I highly recommend this one because it does come with 4 different sizes and 3 different types of hole reinforcers, as I had mentioned previously. And now just using some more ephemera. These are the little flags, and there are several. I've decided to add these and the little tag that reads sunshine. I just thought that was so cute. And there you see that the 2 tags do overlap. so that they could fit on this page, but I just think it looks really pretty. And now I've taken another piece of paper, just folded that in half, and I'm using one of the tags from that collection I was just mentioning. I'm overlapping this, and as you can see there, you can see the stitching on the one flat edge. I ran that through my die cutting machine and created a bottom folding tag. And now I'm removing the image here. It's the one with the sentiment that reads "Sweet Moments." I just cut that away. I wanted to use the little kitten with that sentiment. So as I had mentioned previously, you can alter your different ephemera pieces. So in this case, I'm using a leftover piece of paper there and just creating a light blue background just along the edge there. And this sentiment will go along with that little kitten. I wanted to add a little more contrast, however, so I did take the leftover piece of that paper. This is the one that had the little cabin and the little sheep and everything. And what I did here is that I cut yet a smaller tag out of that sky portion. You can kind of see the eave of the little house there on the top right corner. So I'll cover that up with the sentiment. It says "Sweet Moments," and then onto that I will apply the little kitten image. I think it's so adorable. It's very, very vintage. And then I'm going to add a second little tag here. This time I've doubled it up, white onto blue. And to decorate this, I'm using two circles from the ephemera that have the toile in the blue and white and also the yellow and cream. And I just thought that was really pretty as well. And by the way, I'm erasing a little bit of adhesive there from that white paper. If you don't have a rubber eraser, which is what I just used there, I highly recommend that as well, especially if you're working with white paper. That's how I get all the little icky bits off because adhesive does oxidize and it turns brown and you don't want that on your paper. So here I'm just finishing the front of this folio with yet another little strip of in this case it's holographic paper. I just thought it would add a nice little special touch to this, and it's also going to be what I use on one of the little tags. But here's a little tag with the kitten. As you can tell, it fits perfectly in those little pockets. And there's the second one. Of course, this is just to give you some ideas on how you can use these paper collections. Is so much that you can make. So if, for instance, you like to share recipes with your friends, or there is a group swap that you want to join and you're thinking of an idea of what to make, I recommend this project. If you can see there, I wanted you to see that that 4.5 by 5 inch size will fit the center and it will fit the front pocket. So that way, if you choose to switch the position of, for instance, that diagonal pocket, you want to put that in the center and put the flap on the left, anything like that, then of course you're still going to be able to use that size. And then lastly, there's yet another little strip there on the outside to finish this off. So I do welcome any feedback that you have for me for this tutorial. This was so much fun to make. I love using Paper Rose Studio papers and the ephemera. It just makes it so easy to just have fun crafting because everything coordinates, everything matches, it looks beautiful together. It is effortless to craft with these supplies, and every month there's a new collection that they add. There are new dies that they add to their collections as well, and they are so, so beautiful. Some of them are highly detailed, others are a little bit more simple, such as the stitch tag ones that you saw me use in this collection. But nevertheless, they add beautiful detail to your projects. Please come back. I will have another project for you using some 12 by 12 papers. And by the way, the back of that had that little strip there, so of course you could use the holographic or not, it depends on what you like. But what I wanted to share with you is that I had previously used this collection of flower dies that I'm about to use on the front of this folio, and what I did was that I cut it out of the white cardstock you'll see me use in a moment, but before doing so I did add a little bit of glimmer using just some diamond dots from my collection. They happen to be kind of a holographic color, just like the paper that I use to highlight the little edges of the folio. So what I did is that I cut out some of the flowers, and you're going to see that in just a second here. And I also cut the centers using the little circular centers of the flower from the yellow paper in this collection. Now, because I didn't want the leaves to be stark white or the flowers, then I've taken some Copic markers. They are G12 and BG10. So the G12 is what I use for the centers of the leaves. And again, that's Etched Bloom 3, in case you're wondering. And I've used this before, but you may have not seen that video, so I just wanted to show you there using the green first, and then the blue I just highlighted the little veins in the center of the leaves, and then I also used that BG10 to highlight some of the veins in the flowers. And what I love about these dies is that you do get 4 different flower sizes, and as you can tell there, I'm using the smaller ones, but there is a larger flower. So if you're interested in the sizes of those, then I can tell you that the largest flower in that collection is just under 2 inches wide. And what you're seeing me use is the flower that measures 1.5 inches wide. The second one measures 3/4 of an inch, and then the smallest measures 1/2 an inch wide. And they're just so darling, very dainty, and because there are daisies in the image of the cover of this little folio, then I thought that pretending these were daisies would be fun too. So I've just added a little cluster there with only 2 of the little leaves, and also adding the largest flower in the corner, and then layering the medium-sized flower onto the leaves, and then finishing it off with the tiniest little flower there. Just very delicate and dainty, and it doesn't take anything away from this. And by the way, if you're thinking of, for instance, an Easter gift for a baby, this would be beautiful for that. So it doesn't matter if you added flowers to the front, no one is going to be bothered by that, I promise you. So I just hope that this gives you an idea of how you can use the products that you may already have. I love mixing and matching and just using it all for a little bit of shine. I've also added some crystal glaze to the front of this little folio, and I just kept it super delicate, so I didn't add any of the glitter or the super messy stuff that I typically do. But hey, let me know what you think of this tutorial. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope that you can be inspired and be blessed, and I thank you so much for watching.